All right, guys, we are back, and in the previous video, we were working inside of our tracker blueprint. We set up our checkpoint system so that we've added checkpoints all around our map here. We could actually play in the editor. We could drive all the way around our little track here, and it will update all of our checkpoints, which I tried to demonstrate in the previous video, but I failed miserably and flipped the car over, which is a good segue because in this video, we're going to fix that. So if the player does flip the car over, how do we actually respawn them? We've set up the getting of the location of where to spawn them, but in this video, we're going to set up actually checking and determining if we need to respawn the player. So here's my final checkpoint. I'm going to cross it, and our first checkpoint gets respawned, etc. So our system is working, and we can continue to drive around our track here. So in this video, we are going to set up that respawn functionality. And we're also going to set up and display our laps. So when we've come all the way around, we're going to update our laps and display that through debug code currently. And then we'll hook up our HUD a little bit later. We just want to make sure that we get that script up and working. So let's actually start there. We're going to go down to the content browser, and we're going to go into the blueprints folder. And we're actually going to open up our My Player Controller blueprint. That's where we're going to start. So go ahead and double click, open that up. And in the event graph, make sure that you're on the event graph. Go ahead and click the event graph. If you're not on it, just double click. That'll take you to the event graph. We have the skeleton of all of the script that we want to add, which we'll get to a little bit later. But down towards the bottom, we have the update lap custom event. We're going to work on that script here. So if you recall, way back in our tracker, let me see if I can open that up. Don't have to follow along. Just going to show this real quick. We have our lap check function. So checking if we have completed a lap. Is the race complete? No, it is not. Or yes, it is. In either case, we're calling the update lap function, which we're going to create now. And if I double click on this actually inside the tracker, it'll take me right to that node inside of our player controller blueprint. So let's work on this script. What we're going to do for this, we are going to hop to the My Blueprint panel. I'm going to scroll down a little bit, and we're going to find our race complete variable here. We're going to hold Control, left click, and drag that into the graph. We're going to hold B now on our keyboard and left click to create a branch. And our race complete is going to be that condition. And we're going to connect the executable out to the executable in. So we're just running a double check here. Is the race complete? If it is, we're not going to do anything, or we're not going to worry about anything. We're not adding any laps at that point. If it isn't, then we're going to add a lap. So adding a lap is going to be pretty easy, actually. Let's just go to the My Blueprint panel. And under the value variables, we have actual lap. So the actual lap we are on. Going to hold Control and left click and drag that in. We're then going to drag off of actual lap, hit a plus sign on our keyboard. So integer plus integer. And it will add 1 to it. So we're adding 1 to actual lap. We now need to set that. So we're going to take our actual lap now, left click, and drag and drop it on the out pin of our result here. And that will give us a set node. So let's connect the false up like so. And that will add 1 to our lap, our actual lap. Now we do have another node, or another variable that we are using to actually display this. This is the value. If we go to our My Blueprint panel and expand the text versions, or the text variables, there's our current lap. We need to set this as well. So we're going to take our current lap here. We're going to hold Alt, left click, and drag that into the graph. And we're going to connect our set like so. And we're going to take the out pin of the actual lap and plug that into the current lap. That's going to give us a conversion node, so it's going to take the integer and turn it into text for us, which is perfectly fine. And that's all we need to do, actually, to update and display our lap. There's one more thing that we want to do upon completing a lap, is we want to check and make sure, or check and see if the player has beaten the best lap time. So we've created a function that's going to handle that for us. We're not going to go into and edit that function just yet. But we do want to call it inside of this portion of script here. So over in the My Blueprint panel, there is a lap check function that we created. Go ahead and left click and drag that into the graph. And we're going to hook that up at the end. So once we've decided to add a lap, we're then going to run a check to see if we've got a new lap record. And even if the race is complete, if we've come through at this point and we're seeing if we need to update a lap, the race is complete, we still want to call our lap check function, because we want to check if on the final lap of the race, did the player also get a new lap record. So that is actually going to do it for our update lap. Let's actually add a comment around this. So I'm going to select all of this and hit C. This comment is just going to say update lap, and it's going to say adds to current lap and checks for new lap record, like so. That's all we're going to do. Now there's one other thing that we're going to do temporarily just for testing purposes. Underneath our lap check here, I'm going to right click in the graph and search for print text. So print text is what we want. And this will print text to the log and optionally to the screen, which is what we want. It's going to print something to the screen, and what we're going to print is our current lap text. And we're going to use this just for testing purposes. So go ahead, plug in our current lap text to the in text like so. Take the executable and plug it in to the in like so. So let's compile and save. Now we should be able to run all the way around our race, and we should see that our lap is updated. Now by default, we start out on lap 1. So when we come all the way around, it should say lap 2 in the upper left-hand corner of our screen. So let's go ahead and test this real quick. So I'm going to play, and I'm going to drive around our track. It's at this point that I wish we had a smaller track, but let's just get around it and see. Hopefully I don't flip our car yet. Probably should have done the respawn event first, just in case. So I got to drive very carefully here so that I don't flip us over. But once we come all the way around, we hit all of our checkpoints, we get back to that first checkpoint, or we reach the last checkpoint, I should say. It should say in the upper left-hand corner, as we cross this marker here, should say lap 2, which it does. So if we went around again, it would say lap 3, etc. And because we've set, if we go to our tracker, because we've set in the custom settings the number of max laps, actually when we come back around again, it won't spawn the first checkpoint because we've decided that we've gone all the way around twice, which is our total number of laps. So we would essentially end the race at that point. So it looks like our lap checking and setting is complete. Let's actually work on the respawning of the vehicle if the player flips the car before we wrap up this video. This video may be a little bit shorter than some of the other ones. So let's just go ahead and do that and get that out of the way. So to do that, we're going to hop down to the content browser. And for this, we're actually going to have to go into the Vehicle Advanced BP folder, so the template folder that came with this project. If we expand that, there's a vehicle folder. Let's go ahead and go into the vehicle folder. And right there about the middle of the screen, there's a vehicle blueprint. This is the blueprint that is used to control our vehicle. So this blueprint we didn't create. It came as part of this template. So let's just go ahead and open that up. And there's going to be all kinds of script in here. You actually might default to this this screen here, or this graph here, which is the setup in-car HUD. You may or may not, depending on which version of the editor you are running. It looks like there's a warning with this node. It looks like this needs to be updated. I can tell you what the problem is right here. This node set text string has been deprecated. So what we're going to do, just to be good designers, we're going to fix this. It's not necessarily hurting anything, but let's fix it. So what we'll do, actually, if you mouse over, it should tell you. No, it doesn't. Maybe it does in the warning somewhere at the bottom there. Let's actually just fix it because it won't take too long to do that. All we're going to do, let's right click and let's search for set text. And let's see, what's the one we want? Set text in car gear, because it looks like that's the variable that it's calling. So set text in car gear is the one that we want. All we're going to do is take our gear string here, and we're going to plug that into the value. It's going to give us a conversion node, which is fine. And let's delete this just so we get rid of the warnings and rehook this up. I'll explain in a moment what this is. Let's go ahead and delete this. And let's go ahead and rehook this up. Like so. Again, depending on which version of the editor you're in, you may not even see this. It looks like that this node has been deprecated. So what all we're doing is changing out this node with this node. It's because it's asking for a string value, when in actuality this node is supposed to be using a text input. So I'm just going to select this node, hit Control C, Control V, and paste it down here at the end. So So let's just hook this up. And let's take this and plug it in there. And take this and plug it in there. It's going to give us that conversion node. We can now delete this. We no longer need it. That's all it's doing. So let's compile. Should get rid of those warnings for us. So didn't necessarily need to do that, but just in case we were working inside of the event graph and we were compiling and not wondering why we were getting those warnings, it was because there was some stuff in here that was a little bit outdated, so we went ahead and just fixed it. And all this is doing is setting up, as it's saying here, setting up the gear display in the car. So if you went into first-person mode while driving this vehicle, there's some text that appears while you're driving. This is the portion of the script that handles that, and we just fixed the two nodes there. So with that out of the way, let's actually hop to the event graph. So I'm going to go to the event graph over in the My Blueprint panel. I'm just going to double-click on this. And here is all the script that handles driving this car. There's a bunch of script in here. Fortunately for us, we didn't need to create all this. No need to reinvent the wheel. It's already been done for us. So that's fortunate for us. We didn't have to do this. All we're going to do for this, though, there's a little bit of things that we need to do in order to make sure that the car is actually flipped over. So first thing we're going to do, we're going to hop over to the My Blueprint panel. We're going to create a brand new function in here. So let's click the Add Function button. And we're going to call this function respawn check. Like so. So respawn check. And there's going to be some script that we're going to need to do in here, as well as a new variable that we're going to have to actually create. So let's actually get that variable out of the way first. Let's just create that. So let's go down to the variable section, add variable. This variable is going to be a Boolean, and we're just going to call it stuck with a question mark. Is the player stuck? Yes or no? So how do we determine if the player is stuck? So we're inside of our respawn check graph. First thing that we'll do, we'll hold B and left click to create a branch, like so. And we'll connect that up, like so. And what we'll do here is, if the player is stuck, we'll set, let's actually set our stuck Boolean here. So I'm going to hold Alt, left click, and drag that into the graph. And let's go ahead and plug that in like so. Let's copy and paste this, Control C, Control V. Plug that in like so. For the true, yes, they are stuck. Now there's one thing I forgot to do for our respawn check actually. We're going to need an output for this, return value. So let's click on our function, and down on the details panel, let's click an output. And this output, let's click new. It's going to be of the Boolean type. This output is going to be called player is stuck, question mark. So now we can move this down to the end, like so. We can hook this up. We can hook this up. We can take our stuck variable, just control, or just left click and drag, drop that on, player is stuck. So we do need to get the condition. How do we determine if the player is stuck? Well, to do this, let's right click on the graph. Let's search for get actor up vector. So get the actor up vector. We're going to start out with that. We're going to drag off the return value now. And we're going to use another dot product, our dot product friend. And we're actually going to not specify another vector. All we're going to do is for the Z here, we want to see if this is 1.0. And once we have that, we could drag off the return value. And we could say, let's do a less than symbol, float. And we'll make this, let's say 0.5. Something like this. So we're getting the up vector, comparing that against the Z value of 1. And if it's the return of that is less than 0.5, that is one part of the condition that we're going to use. The other part of the condition that we're going to use, if we go over to the My Blueprint panel, and let's go into the component section. It's not in there actually. We're actually going to have to show some components here. So go up to the My Blueprint panel in the upper right-hand corner. There's an option called Show Inherited Variables. Go ahead and click that. And now we can go down to the Pawn section. Is that under Pawn? No, it's not. It's under Vehicle. Yep. So under Vehicle, there's a Vehicle Movement component. Go ahead and hold down Control, left-click, and drag that into the graph. What we're going to do here is drag off of this now and get forward speed. So get our speed. How fast are we moving? And for this, we're also going to say, let's see, less than, a less than symbol, less than 0.5. They are moving less than 0.5 forward. These are going to be our two conditions. So if both of these are true, we're going to use that to determine that the player is stuck. So let's drag off of this and say and. So the player has flipped over and their speed is less than 0.5, like so. Now the reason we're also comparing it against speed, if we did just the player has flipped over by itself, so the player is upside down by itself, we could get into a situation where the player is moving forward, they go off a jump and they flip over and they're still moving forward, but then they roll over again. In those instances, we wouldn't necessarily want to respawn the player. We would want to respawn the player only when they are upside down and they are not moving forward at all. In those two instances, then we would elect to respawn our player. So our respawn check is done. Let's go ahead and add a comment around this. Can I hit C and say check and see if the player is not moving and is upside down. So let's compile and save. And then let's hop over to the event graph. So I'm going to hop over to the event graph now. And on the event graph, there's a couple things that we need to do. First and foremost, we're going to go to our event begin play up here at the very top. We're going to stretch this out a little bit because there's one thing that we need to do. So the first thing that we need to do, actually, is let's right click, let's get player controller. So let's get our player controller and let's get a reference to that. So drag off of this and say cast to my player controller, like so. And connect that up. I'm going to promote that to a variable. So we're going to right click on this, promote it to a variable, and we're going to call this, we'll call this controller a reference, like so. And we're going to use this later. Actually, we're going to use it right now, but we're also going to use it later too. We'll come back to this vehicle blueprint a little bit later in this series. But for now, what we're going to do is drag off of our controller reference and set respawn location. Now, the reason we're setting respawn location on event begin play here is if the player somehow managed to flip the car over before they even get to the first checkpoint, we still need a point of reference to respawn the player at. So all we're going to do, right click, get actor transform. So get actor transform down here at the bottom. And the target is ourself, this vehicle. So we're just going to plug that in. So when the game begins, get the location of our vehicle when we spawn in and set that as the default spawn location. So that's all we're doing. We want to create that just in case the player somehow flips the vehicle before they get to the first checkpoint. They need a place to respawn. So let's rehook up our set to the rest of this blueprint here. So we have that. And there's one more thing we need to do before we can test this out. We need to go down to the event tick section. So the event tick is running every frame while we're running the game. It's checking things. There's a sequence node where it's doing all kinds of things. It's executing this portion of script. It's also executing this portion of script. I'm going to take this audio portion of script over here, and I'm just going to move this over a little bit because we're going to add one more pin to this sequence here so that we can run our own portion of script to continually check and see if the player has flipped the car over. So let's go ahead and add a pin down here on this sequence node next to the event tick. So add pin. And we're going to right click in the graph and we're going to call our respawn check function. So we're going to call our respawn check. I'll plug that in like so down here. Maybe I'll move it underneath like that. Yeah, it looks a little bit better. So here's our respawn check. We're going to hold B to create a branch and left click. Plug in our player is stuck into the condition, like so. Now what we're going to do, if we've determined that the player has not flipped their vehicle, we're not going to do anything off the false. But we have determined that the player has flipped their vehicle, we're going to use a delay node. So we're going to wait a second. We're going to give the player a second to see if they flip their car, if they manage to get it back onto their wheels. So if they've tumbled over, we don't necessarily want to say they flip their car, instantly respawn them. We want to give them a second. So we're going to add a delay node. We're going to drag off the trail. And you can come back and set this a little bit lower or higher later if you like. But for now, we're going to add a delay node. And this delay node is going to last for, let's do 4 seconds. So 4 seconds. After 4 seconds, we've determined that the player still is stuck. Then we'll destroy the vehicle and respawn another one. So we're going to have to recall our respawn check to check again. So I'm going to hit Control-C and Control-V to paste it. So we're going to recheck. Let's take our branch, copy, paste, and connect it again. Now off the trail, we're going to destroy this vehicle, at which point we can respawn another one. So again, we're just giving the player a little bit of time to see if they were able to get back onto their wheels after flipping their car. So off the true here, let's go ahead and destroy actor. So that'll destroy the vehicle. And then directly below this script, we're going to right click and we're going to say event destroyed. So event destroyed at the very top, we're adding an event for whenever this actor is destroyed. And when the actor is destroyed, what we want to do is get our controller reference, hold Control, left click, drag that into the graph, and we have a function that we've created inside of our player controller called respawn vehicle. So we're going to call that now. So let's connect this up, and let's add a quick comment around this. Hit C and say checking if player has flipped their car and is stuck. If so, call respawn vehicle in my player controller. So there we go. This script is set up. We just need to set it up now inside of our player controller, which will be very, very quickly, and we can test this, and then we'll close out this video. So let's go ahead and compile and save. And let's close out this blueprint. Let's hop back to our blueprints folder that we created inside the content browser here. Let's go to our My Player Controller, double click and open it up. And on the event graph, make sure you're on the event graph. Down below our update lap, we have the respawn vehicle event. Let's go ahead and set that up. It's going to be very quick. All we need to do is right click and say spawn actor from class. So we're going to spawn an actor from class. So I'm going to connect this up. The class that we want to spawn, we're going to click this drop down, and it's going to be the vehicle blueprint. So our player character blueprint there, the wheeled vehicle blueprint, go ahead and select vehicle blueprint. Now it has some nodes on here. The only nodes that we really care about is the spawn transform, where to spawn it. Fortunately for us, we created that variable called respawn location. So go ahead and drag that into the graph, left click and drag it into the graph and drop it on top of spawn location so that it will now spawn a vehicle at that location. The last thing that we need to do is drag off the return value. So the object that we are spawning, we need to say possess. And this node is used to actually take control of the object that we are spawning. So select possess. So once we've spawned it, possess it. And the target is our player controller, which is ourself, which is perfectly fine. We are done. Let's go ahead and add a comment around this. Hit C and say respawn vehicle when flipped. So that's it. Let's compile and save. And let's go back to our level. Let's just save everything just in case. Let's save our level. Let's go ahead and save up here just to make sure. So we are set. Let's actually test this. If I can actually flip the vehicle over now, that should be fun. I'm going to drive over to this section over here. Maybe I can go off of this at an angle and flip us. Let's see. Actually, you know what? Before I do that, I'm going to drive through this first checkpoint, or maybe even the second one. So I'll drive through this checkpoint too. So when we flip, we should respawn back at that checkpoint we just cleared. So let's go off this and kind of, look at that, first try. So 4 seconds have passed and we have respawned back at the previous checkpoint. So if I were to clear this checkpoint now and come over here and flip, or go to this checkpoint, let's try it one more time. So let's go over here. didn't go through that checkpoint right. So let's actually turn around and go through that the right way. So I should respawn back at that checkpoint that I just cleared. So let's try it again. Yeah, there we go. So let's see, it should respawn us at that checkpoint, which it did. So we are set. We have, in this video, set up our respawning system for when we accidentally flip our car over. We set up our lap display, so it's keeping track and displaying the number of laps that we have completed. That's going to do it for this video. In the next video, we are going to start working on the race and lap timers and get that displayed in game so that we can see our timers through debug code before we start working on our HUD a little bit later. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.